but I really appreciated what we did talk about, and you seem like you're very much on the same page as us in terms of, you know, you recognize the value of what the BitShares ecosystem offers, and you seem to have a very similar philosophy behind how this technology, where this technology should be utilized, and how we should allow it, and how we should use it to take us where we're going, as opposed to sitting there and letting it take us where, you know, we're going just on one side. We have to kind of make sure that it's both sides, right? It's us using this technology for the right reasons, which seemed to be pretty much a theme to what we were talking about last night. And we also covered a little bit about, your thoughts on why BitShares is where it is in terms of, not getting a whole lot of coverage in the media. Not, it almost feels like it's ignored now, whether that's our problem, or the problem of the Bitcoin ecosystem and all that good stuff, is something that we can talk about. But we had some really good discussions along those lines last night and a few other places. But do you guys have any place that you would like to start, or do you have any place where you'd like to start, Alicia? I would like to start with kind of maybe a little bit of your background and what you've been up to, but um, it's up to you guys. This isn't my thing. Like, I just organized them and put them together, and I'm now an attendee here.
Well, I can start with a little bit of background, and then I would actually like to jump into a particular area of interest for me, which is the amount of eyes that are currently on it. And I guess that's just coming from a PR perspective. So a little bit of background is I several years ago I worked on a project called Producia, which was based on a new economic model. And we were looking for ways for people to be able to trade goods and services without using cash in particular, but and also a way to kind of streamline productivity, but keep track of productivity and create a complete system out of it. And so we were focused on time banking in particular at that time. And so through doing that, we did a lot of research into community exchange systems, how they work, and why they don't work. Um, and so I took a little time off from there. And at that point, just kind of focused on a little bit of web development, consulting in a variety of industries. And I mean, it always comes back to the money. I mean, within any industry. So from there, I guess, were you going to say something, Fuzzy?
Oh, I just said that's a fair assessment.
Yeah. And so I guess so here I am today, and we begin our talk the other day, last week. And what I did 2 days ago was I typed in blockchain technology 16, 2016 trends, and it barely came up in any of the trends for what people need to watch for. And so I find that to be interesting that out of the entire year and things that they are predicting as some of the hottest technology, some of the hottest trends, and some of the things that we need to pay attention to, blockchain technology is completely left out of. So that tells me several things. It's either A, people are moving away from it because they don't understand the capacity it has to change the game, or simply put, people do not understand and people aren't aware. And like we mentioned in the email, is if people aren't aware, then they can't take advantage of all that it has to offer them. I just gave it a second because I didn't want if somebody wanted to chime in, but um, I think that goes to say we have about maybe 12 months to 18 months to really sculpt out, you know, what this vision could look like, because the vision is there, but we haven't, uh, I guess, created an image for people to kind of attach themselves to and understand how easy it is to get acclimated to this system.
Yeah, I'll say that our Hangouts has been the one thing that we have had available for people if they wanted to connect, but it's so hard to just get people to connect via a Hangout. You almost need an outreach effort that brings them on. Um, and I'm not, a PR or a marketing person per se, but those things seem like You know, I don't consider this a marketing effort, but in a way it is. It's more of a community building effort.
We'll
But
see to
we'll see to go ahead.
Well, I was going to say to a degree it is. And I think what really allows people to trust a system is consistency. And so that goes back to that stability of the dollar. And so when you have something that's consistent, it's around the clock, people can put their faith back into it. And so while this is, yes, this is a marketing effort, but A, it has a certain barrier to entry. And B, um, that barrier entry needs to be low so that they can kind of fall into it, just like you said the other evening when you were like, well, try bit assets, so that try it factor right there just kind of tells them, okay, this is easier than you think.
Don't be afraid to try, just to see what it's like. You're not losing anything if you try and don't like it. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I'm big on notes, so I'm like always taking notes at the same time because if I have an idea.
Oh, you're good.
No, but
Yeah,
I
the only reason I say that is because I feel like that's someplace where, um, to a large degree, we've been, this has been our consistency and our outreach and everything. But I think we've needed some other efforts that would be more focused on specifically that. And you talked a lot about some of that last night as well. But
yeah
I'll
I
go ahead and I'll back up.
Oh no, you're fine. Yeah, see, this is the thing. I think that we need a systematic or a series of outreach efforts that are boom, 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 and they're all very punchy. So let's say that we have a series of seminars and we want to have one in New York, California, and Texas, and they all reside on the same bits of information, but given to all of these general demographics. So then you have a series of public talks by influencers, then social media. And I've looked at the BitShares branding. Um, but I'm not sure of how much that branding is pushing its actual use aside from just giving it a face.
Yeah,
And that
we're
right
not.
there, go ahead.
I would say that that's an area where the difficulty for us has been like with tutorials. I was talking about this with somebody the other night. Um, and actually, this also pigeontails really well into what we were talking about last night about the user interface. The user interface, we pretty much just came to the conclusion a long time ago, um, is the most it's the most important for the user side. Like you said last night too, the user has to be extremely comfortable. They need to feel like, a sense of comfort and safety whenever they're on a program, especially if it's going to be dealing with their money. They
Yeah.
need to know that it's going to be, you know, that this is going to be very easy for them to use, that they're not going to accidentally make a mistake and then lose everything. But the problem with all that stuff is like we kind of need that GUI interface to be able to start doing a lot of the tutorials and things that people would have needed. Now, maybe you're talking about something little bit less in depth and a little bit more broad, kind of like overall just talking about BitShares and what the vision of it and all that stuff. And if that's the case, then yeah, that's something that we could definitely look at a little bit more, I would say.
I mean, if you look at most technology, it doesn't even have to be technology, but they come with user guides. And so, just initially, a lot of people aren't going to look through a piece of technology's entire piece of documentation. So then you have user guides that make it easier. But just like you said, a very easy to use user interface, whereas um, you can have those demo videos that kind of show people click from click, how to get used to that piece of software service. And so something like that could really make a difference. But again, going back to these multiple languages where you cross different cultures because now you have it in Spanish, you have it in Mandarin, you have it in Russian, And it's that same user interface, that same demo video showing people from different spectrums how to use this same piece of technology, especially because it's decentralized. So if it's decentralized and it's in all these areas in these networks, then tapping into them simultaneously with the same bits of information are just as important, because that's what's going to be happening in the system anyway. The same bits of information are going to be shooting out to all of these decentralized areas. So why not make the image, the message, and what it stands for and is about just as seamless and transparent through all those networks, through a very easy to use and friendly interface as well.
I see.
You know,
I was in
go ahead.
a chat room with some Ethereum people, and they're all arguing over smart contracts. How this guy's using the term wrong, and that's not what it really means. Here's what Nick Szabo says, and they're kind of infighting about these terms, which they're basically copying from somebody else anyway. Okay, so ether is a chemical compound. I mean, so and things like blocks and mines are those are engineering terms. But the point is, one of the points I want to make is that there's a bunch of people kind of in that center in the Ethereum Bitcoin geekdom, and it seems like BitShares is trying to jump in there and play and 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 uh, and be part of that group when they're trying to, it's in their best interest to keep us out. So I believe there's a
Yeah.
much bigger demographic of people, people who Ethereum and Bitcoin aren't even looking at, who would and could benefit and use BitShares. It sounds nicer, it sounds less competitive, it sounds less dangerous, and that should be exploited.
I agree.
Yeah, I like the branding, the way that I've always tried to tell people, rather than us brand it as bit shares, that shares in companies, which is definitely a use case. I've always tried to tell people that it seems like the trend is toward like a peer-to-peer economy nowadays. Like if you see Uber on the rise and things like that, you can understand what I'm talking about. But it seems like this Uberization is going across into many other spheres of industry and consumer services and all that good stuff. And it's it's one of those things where, hold on a second, where if we have the opportunity to kind of brand ourselves with the term share, as sharing, and something that is becoming more and more of interest, especially to the millennial generation that's watching what's going on around them and saying, my gosh, we don't even need most of this infrastructure. Maybe I don't need the government to give me money so I can buy um a drip for $70, and they give me a big discount on my taxes because of it and all this stuff. And then maybe instead I can just rent it from somebody who already has it for an hour or two. Like these are the types of things that people are looking at as possibilities. And we can really, I think, get on board with that. The only thing that I would say as far as the user interface and getting people used to it is, and I don't know how to deal with this either, is the interface changes quite frequently, because I consider this like an open beta. I really do, and I think that we should, as a community, tell people that this is kind of a beta level program right now. It's being used live by many people who are very interested and passionate about it, but it's going to change. And the problem with that is, if I make a tutorial for how to use the system right now, um, my fear is that in 2 or 3 weeks somebody's going to come out with a couple big changes to the wallet, or somebody else is going to come out with a wallet they've been secretly developing that's better than the wallet that we have now. And I've that's the reason that I've personally kept from creating tutorials on that stuff, is because I've done stuff in the past and found, like Alicia said, so before, it's like things move so quick in the space, and we're such a young project that things seem to be moving even faster. So it's kind of like I might spend, a week making a really decent tutorial, and then find out that in a week, in a week or two, that it's kind of out of date already. And I don't know how to get around these things. Do you guys have any ideas? I'm assuming that you might have some thoughts on it.
I have well, for one is because it's evolving so fast, you know, I don't think anything is wrong with it moving in phases. Whereas even if a piece of technology or a component to it is brought onto the table and is added, then it can maintain that. But from a front end user experience point of view, it doesn't have to be put out there on the surface just yet and can still be tested in the background. And so I guess that brings me to a question of how much user testing has BitShares done to kind of see what works and what doesn't work with the people they intend to use it with? Because they may be doing things or including aspects that really don't need to be revealed, and as Dan says, are a few clicks down the road.
Sure. So you're saying as far as the minimum viable product,
Exactly.
uh, yeah, bringing that to people. Now, how would you recommend, like, how are some strategies that you could think of that would be the best ways of accomplishing that?
I would actually take a look at everything that you have, and then my mind is to put it in the form of an app, a mobile app, just because it's easier to test users on. But then that's what's most common right now, and because everything is moving to mobile, and it makes it easier because now somebody might not have a laptop, but then you make it accessible to people everywhere. And I would do that. I would make a decent user experience for it, front end app, and then I would test it. I would have like take it through 2 month phases and just try it on a series of people. Try the first month, see how they like it. Take them to the second month to see how they like it, what they like and don't like. And then I would take it back and forth.
Did she just cut out for everybody else?
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
I was thinking more about,
Yeah,
you
you're
got this
cutting out a little bit.
Sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
this tail wagging the dog thing. So you don't want to put out a tutorial because you're afraid that somebody's going to develop something which makes that tutorial obsolete. However, if you write the guides so that it write the tutorial so it's guiding those who are developing behind you, um, then maybe that'll notify the developers what's actually needed, instead of them just popping up with some idea that they have.
I agree with that. And you know what that actually makes me think of, Dan, is something we spoke about yesterday. And maybe I didn't talk to you about this, but it might have been fuzzy. Is well, we spoke about this previously, is bringing more developers on board, and just other techies who are aware of this, but scholarships for developers. So finding forms of funding for people to just learn how to do this stuff. So finding more money for them, and then potentially blockchain incubators. So the same way they might have an incubator that's focused on health technology or that's focused on wearables, an incubator that's focused on individuals or small startups that want to work on blockchain technology.
Well, there's a
Yeah.
lot of those, but I'm thinking specifically um, for BitShares. It needs to have a big happy face on it and thrown to the market as like the people's blockchain. This is the simple one. This is the one that doesn't um, put you at risk of billionaires. This is the one that lets you do a lot of cool stuff, and then keep it that light and attract people that way. Kind of go for a completely different dynamic than the group of geeks who are trying to duke each other out of the game.
Yeah, you're saying the blockchain that's really going to change the world and usher in the age that everybody has been saying that the blockchain could usher in, but has been kind of refusing to look at the dangerous aspects of where they sit, and has kind of ignored some of the solutions that have been provided already. Kind of focus on the dream and what's possible with this, and make it kind of a movement of sorts. The people's blockchain is something I love that. I just see a hashtag, the people's blockchain or people's blockchain, and a bunch of, um, stories being posted by people who are working on BitShares blockchain and how it's changing people's lives. Those types of things are like, you're right. That's something that we can get trending.
And
That would
I
be
agree. I think
the
that's impactful.
the members of this group are your first endorsers. I'm going to come out and say this is the one that I recommend for engineering. I'll be making bold statements very shortly that I think you're barking up the wrong tree, trying to fix the banks. You need to do this instead. I mean, I'm ready to make some pretty bold comments, and I'm sure others are as well.
I'd imagine that you're correct on that. I would imagine that there's plenty of people in our community who are interested and willing to make some bold comments, because we've been sitting here and looking at this for quite some time. I guess, one of the places where I would like to go with this then is, and this is the most important one for me in terms of bringing Alicia on board, is I was talking to her about because of the political situation, because we introduce politics in this and we allow the stakeholders to make these decisions about, hiring, using the blockchain's tokens and distributing them to people via what we call worker proposals. Because of this, it makes it a little bit more difficult to ensure that you might, like that you would get a worker proposal for X amount of dollars, because it would really truly require all of the community members to get behind it, and well, not all of them, but a large percentage of them, and get them to also overcome voter apathy and vote on it. Now, I would definitely back it, and I would be willing to help do something like that. But I'm trying to also figure out for the community and try to open this up, what types of things would you want to do if you, let's say you got, quote unquote, you were a part of the BitShares ecosystem, as far as you were really, you realized that, okay, let's move forward with what I would like to see, and these are the resources I need. Um, if money is because you and I are very similar on this, I think it's cool. If money is just one form of payment, what other forms of payment, what other assets do we have that could help you? And kind of what would you be looking at as far as the resources that you think that you would need, and to effectively come up with these projects and get a good push on them?
Well, what's interesting is we all know that money isn't the end all. And so with that, I think actually one of the biggest resources for me would actually be my time, would be the time that I would need to kind of come up with a strategic plan, get everybody on board, and things of that nature. But in terms of resources that can be distributed and passed around, again, just like time, it would be knowledge and it would be support. So let's say, for example, um, I see that there's a need for within a strategic marketing plan that we want to have a short docu-series that follows along some of the BitShares developers and kind of tells the human side of what's being created, as well as them kind of giving information about it. So I see like a twofold story, whereas you're introducing people to BitShares on a human level, but then at the same time that you're introducing it to that information on a human level, you are telling the story behind many of the people behind this technology. So let's say I want to shoot that. Again, a resource for me would be, if I come to your various city or town, just give me a room and some food and I'm good, and sit in front of the camera and just talk to me so that I can capture that information, and then me and the director can go back and edit it. And then at the end of that series, now we have a good solid piece of film that we can either, put on the internet to go viral. We can either send to Vice documentaries. If anybody in this room is familiar with Vice, Vice documentaries are huge and they come from around the world. But I feel like something like that, whereas if we say that we need to do something, that we all stick to it. I think one of the biggest problems for me personally is when I have clients, and not that you guys would be clients because we'd be more so partners, but when I have clients that are willing to pay me, but then they don't even want to do the work to follow through with making the plan successful. So then we scope out this whole thing, but then we don't follow through with it. So I think that's the biggest thing is just receiving a consistent amount of support. And then if there are certain aspects on it that require minimal resources, just being assistive and just offering those, you know. Does that make sense?
Definitely. That's one of the things that um, I'm pretty confident that our community would support you in a lot of ways with respect to, especially like hangouts and things like that. But it goes beyond hangouts. It goes into the realm of, if Alicia needs X done, um, we need a team of people who are willing to help Alicia get X, Y, and Z done, because Alicia cannot be doing all this stuff for free. I understand that a lot of us are here doing a lot of stuff for free, and have for quite some time. But the thing is, you're in a place where I'm sure you love BitShares, but I don't know that, it hasn't been life for you for the past 2 years. So it's kind of, we're in this place where it's very difficult to say, um, for some people, if I put a worker proposal up for Alicia, it might be great. Politically, there's somebody out there who might get really frustrated and all that stuff. So I'm not worried about the politics of it, but the incentivization and what tools and resources we have to help incentivize that would be very important. I mean, I would have no problems giving you some, copper and silver tickets that we have that can be used to enter special hangouts and stuff in the future. Maybe we could, hey, Bubba's, maybe we could do something like, um, uh, oh,
I
sorry, I
think it
just
would
had
be,
my little boy
no, you're
climb up
fine.
on me.
I think it would be very, very useful for me personally is what I tend to do is I tend to look at things on a bigger scope, bigger picture, and then I look at the pieces and I see how they work together. And then from there, seeing how they work together, I see what kind of things would be required in order to, maximize their potentiality. So for me, in this scenario in particular, it would be literally talking to the different members in the group or, in the community, and just kind of like on the forum, seeing what some of these pain points are. So how can we smooth these pain points over and make them work, more efficiently in an ecosystem where we all thrive together. And so from there, I'll be able to see what my needs are, because what my needs might actually be somebody else's need. I may need somebody else's need to be filled in order to do what I need to do.
I
Yeah,
think we have to give Alicia some power. I mean, this non-negotiable. If she calls you up, you got to talk to her, even if it's just for a few. It'll be just for a few minutes. If she comes to town, we got to put her up, and let her put on her resume that she is the PR director for BitShares, and
yeah.
let that get out.
Well, these are the types of assets we can do. You know what I mean? Like, these are the types of things that we can do today, and that's stuff that the politics doesn't really touch. You know what I mean? So we can do those things. My big thing is trying to, and you and I have talked about this quite frequently too, Dan. How do we how do we essentially create a list of work that needs done by the community and guided, and now they're being guided by somebody who actually has market research like there and available, and can say, hey, this is the low hanging fruit, we need to go here, you know. But she can show them that, but how to incentivize them to actually help. um and the thing that I think of is, to have essentially kind of a consortium of the various BitShares based business projects that have tokens, could perhaps donate some to her, and she could distribute them in little allotments to people who are helping her. for the completion of various tasks, maybe complete like quests or milestones. And once the community has collectively reached a milestone, the people who are participating get X out of, because all these businesses that are built like blockchain, block trades, Meta Exchange, Beyond Bitcoin, all of us are going to benefit from what she's doing anyway. And this common, we have to have this common set of things that everybody is going to need, that we need to essentially kind of foot the bill to make sure that it gets done, at least to a certain degree, because it's going to uplift not only BitShares, but all the projects that are tied together under the BitShares umbrella, so to speak. So have you guys thought about have you thought about how a token could be used to potentially to help bring people on board and get them actively participating and doing the things that you might need them to do?
Isn't it in everybody's best interest that their bit shares increase in value?
Oh, yes. And you and I will think logically on this. Unfortunately, rationality isn't always the purview of humanity. We are predictably irrational is the term a guy named Dan Ariely likes to use, and I tend to agree with the guy.
If people have large holdings of bit shares, and they know that one spike can quadruple or multiply that value by 100-fold, wouldn't they be incentivized to cooperate with the person who's going to induce that?
You would think, but then there's the other dynamic that a lot of people who are whales would prefer to sit on a bunch of their tokens, and for some reason, and I'm not saying this about all of them because it's hard to say, about all of them, but I will say that from what I've noticed, a lot of people who have the most tokens, some of them are very, very giving. I know of one specifically who's here, probably too giving. But on the other side of the spectrum, you have people who have a bunch of tokens who are not, they're just wanting everybody else to do the work, and it's speculative for them. And they're saying, I don't really care I want this to go up, but I'm not going to sacrifice to make it go up. So we have a really interesting, these are things that are amazing because this is the people's blockchain, but then at the same time, this is stuff that other cryptocurrencies don't have to deal with.
I think to a degree, though, that once there's a solid plan in place, again, this goes back to a strategic plan where it's boom, 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 boom. And these are the pieces that we're going to tie together to make this thing push forward, to open that floodgate, so to speak. And sometimes people need to see it to believe it, So there's a quote that says, pioneer, they believe it and then they see it, while most people need to see it before they believe it. And so for others,
Wow,
it may be
great statement.
yeah. And so for others, it may be something where they see this solid plan where they're like, you know what? Okay, this can really take this up. I'm in. So it may be something like that. And again, like I said, it always goes back to time, because now, just like you guys, during the day, I'm talking to clients, I'm putting out fires for people. If one of the developers need help, I might look at a website and just decide that the entire page just looks like trash and say, look, we just need to rebuild this entire page. And depending on what the workflow is looking like, I may get in there, rebuild the page, and then let them, tidy it up. And so it goes back to just being able to be fluid, be flexible, be agile, but be going steadfast toward that end goal. And so typically for me, because I do PR and web development, is that end goal is what the user or what that client needs. So right now with BitShare, we are trying to serve that user experience, and we're trying to expound upon that. And so with that said, is we may not necessarily get an entire community buy-in now. I mean, nobody immediately buys in automatically off break, or just from hearing a few words and a few conversations. However, if they see something in their face in place that makes sense to them and it sounds right, they can't lose.
What about being able to give to drop bit shares on people who are not part of the community. I mean, it is tradable. It may not be tradable by very much, but there's a lot of speculators who aren't part of the community, and if we need them to do something, maybe they'll work in exchange for a drop of bit shares. So, if are there any available? Can we take a collection in bit shares and give them to Alicia to go out and distribute accordingly? It's be like, it's, you give people the currency that they never had before, and they're going to figure out how to use it.
And I think that's key right there, Dan, again, is to getting people acclimated, because I had already thought about the fact that when I went to this event the other day, and it was about 50 to 60 people there, some of the most well-known entrepreneurs in my city, and about 2 or 3 people knew about blockchain technology. I was talking to one bioengineer, and he knew what it was. And because he knew what it was, he pointed me to the only other person in the room he knew would know about this technology. And so it's interesting that we had this talk. But what I'm realizing is every time I talk to somebody about it, either A, they don't know about it, or B, they only know a very few people who do, and they're excited that I'm even having this conversation with them. And so I think it's kind of normalizing the fact that it is just normalizing it. Simple as that. Simplifying the message, simplifying the technology, and normalizing it. Whereas it might be something that you see on Inc.com magazine, or you might see somebody talking about, what BitShares is doing and how it can make an impact on entrepreneur.com. And so I think that's key, is for people to start seeing it in some of these common spaces. So for me, just like Apple does when they're looking for the best of the best customer service out there on the market, they go places like Best Buy, they receive some service, and if somebody gives them astounding service, then what they do is they hand them a business card, and that card says, "You've done a great job. I love your customer service. Let's talk if you want to work at Apple." So from there, on a flip side, again, and we're talking about marketing, whereas you have these select bit shares, is let's say I go to an event. Let's say I do a TED Talk. Let's say I do a local TED Talk called the People's Blockchain. And at that event, I decide that I want to give out 4 or 5 cards that have bit shares. Now, at that point, I could do a talk and say at the end of that talk, I'm going to give out 5 gift cards, or, we can call them share cards, whatever we call them. I can give out 4 of those that give these individuals in that room, but instead of giving it to people quietly, instead of giving it to people just on a whim, giving it to people in a way that not turns it necessarily into a spectacle, but into a prize to be won. That I'm giving you something that not too many people have. Share this, talk about it, and then tell me how easy it was for you to experience, sharing these bit shares on the community after so.
Yeah, these are tokens which represent
something that.
Yeah, you just say these are tokens that represent productivity of others, people building this thing, and now you get to share in that. It's a really, really sweet arrangement, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially. No, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, because what I'm seeing is the potential here, and I don't know, we could see where it would go, but have you guys thought about potentially, what if we had like a worker proposal set up to essentially give a certain amount of money to her to do outreach and stuff, and she can bring on the community to do some of that outreach with her. And then those tokens could be used to, distribute to people like what she's talking about, but also some of it could be used for her. Because I'm personally of the belief, and I don't know where everybody else stands, but something we should bring up in the community too, at large. Of course, anybody who's here, feel free to speak up. You know how this works. But I personally there's a guy in our community named Ken Code. He's been working on BitShares for a long time, really busting his butt and sacrificing a lot, but he has maybe 10,000 shares, 15,000 shares the last time I checked. He's not a big stakeholder. Like if BitShares goes to the moon, yeah, he'll probably be sitting on a decent bit of money. Like, let's say BitShares goes to $1, he'll be sitting on maybe $10,000, $15,000. But like there have been guaranteed at that point, there will be a bunch of people who have far more who haven't done quite as much. And I really think that it's important for us to start confronting the issue of worker proposals and using them. And I think Dan's been expressing this too. And I'm looking into it more and more because for a while, Dan said, and I'm not saying that Dan is the only person who gets to make a decision in BitShares, but he's the founder of it, so he carries a lot of weight. His opinion carries a lot of weight. And for a while, he said, I believe that developers should be the ones that are searching for worker proposals, and that people who are in media and doing all this other stuff probably aren't the ones that we should be paying to do that. Now, to a degree, I understand that, but at the same time, I try to tell people there's a certain point in a startup's existence where it needs to kind of get rid of those preconceived notions that you shouldn't spend anything or any of that stuff. Like we shouldn't be afraid to help kickstart those projects who are going to bring us to a larger audience and increase the size of our community. So it's more of in terms of all that stuff, it's more of a balancing act to see if the money that's spent is has created a network effect is sufficiently enough to counteract the quote unquote dilution to the network's tokens.
You know what I liken it to is you have an engine. And so you have these developers or these engineers that create this engine, but then what are you going to fuel that engine with? And so that to me is that marketing push, that public image push, that fuel that kind of gets that engine going, because the engine is on, and so it's kind of like you're there, but I feel like marketing and that image is that fuel that kind of gets that engine going to where it can just run.
Perpetually.
Exactly.
I would agree with you. My thing, I would say that I personally will support a worker proposal or anything like that to help get this on board. I'll also support it by, with my time and effort where I can. I don't know where everybody else stands on this, but that's where I stand. So you have that from me, guaranteed. I just need, of course, to be able to show something to the community,
Yeah, and I think that's key. And we talked about this is showing something to community. Just having some things laid out whereas they understand where it is now, where it can go if certain things are taken into effect. You know, that's just putting the pieces together. And if we do this, then we get here. If we do this, we get here. But I think outreach is one of the biggest things right now, and outreach in the areas that aren't typically tapped into. So it's not just the tech scene, but it's all over. So just going to meetups, going to different things, I think that's huge. Talking to entrepreneurs, talking to engineers, because again, entrepreneurs and engineers, developers, all these individuals are going to be the people that take these coins and really put a use to them, especially in the community.
I 100% agree with you on that. That's where I've been coming at from. The use of the ShareBot for us is more and more growing into how do we bring on not just people but communities at the time, like rather than just focus on individual people, focus on a community that is very rich in certain demographics that we need, and then we create a meta community, right?
Yeah, just I mean, literally everywhere in the same way that the technology works, decentralized. So at the same time, we're going to be connecting to people all over the world because again, a big part of this is having people translate this information. The same information that we make consistent in an English format, we make just as consistent in these multiple languages, and we tap into those communities too. And then we don't just tap into them, but we tell them that we need them because that is a part of being human. everybody wants to feel needed, whether they believe it or not, or whether they want to say they want to feel needed. But you do want to feel needed, especially in a community, because you want to know that what you have to offer as a person has value.
True. That's a human need that goes above and beyond what money can even touch most of the time.
But then in this case, what we're doing is we're showing a certain value for what it is that individuals have to offer, and we're exchanging them through bit shares.
That's the problem that Curiosity solves, but there's a huge chasm in between here and there. And what you guys are talking about now is filling that chasm so we can get to those huge ideas of Curiosity and wicked tools and those things.
Yeah, we talked about this at length. Go ahead, Fuzz.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just saying yes. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I agree with Dan a lot. Me and him talked about this last night, and we threw a lot of ideas out. And I told him, the way I see it, we've had virtual, in my mind, in this picture that I drew right here, we've had virtual assets, and that's going down. So it's like we're pulling it out of, thin air almost. But then we have this physical assets, and then as Dan describes, we have this ground vault that sits in the middle, and it's, how do we close this gap?
Yeah, those are the struggles that we are definitely dealing with, and I'm looking forward to hearing some of the solutions that are proposed. I think that one of the biggest things that would be helpful would be to be able to have something that we can show in the community and say, this is the plan. These are the things that we would, this is the wish list, so to speak, to accomplish this plan. These are the things that are absolutely necessary to accomplish this plan. These are the things that you'll get on top of this plan. If you add more into, more resources, the more we can do, right? I think if we could approach it from that standpoint, kind of show them what they will get or what they won't get if they don't, and I hate to say it that way, but I think it's important that we recognize and kind of tell people, what they will not be able to get if they don't give a little bit of resources to help achieve it, right? But I think if we do something like that, we can probably get some support on this.
So, Alicia, you need to put together the plan that you have and the resources that you'll need, including for yourself as well as for sprinkling about the community. So you want to give away, X amount of bit shares and so forth. And then we present that to everybody, and I guess we'll see what happens.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, and what we can also do is potentially reach out to the various people who are building stuff in the BitShares ecosystem and see if they wouldn't be willing to do some stuff, like offer up some stuff too in their own, some people can offer money, some can offer services, some can, offer partnerships in some ways. There are many assets in this world that we don't value nearly enough, and oftentimes use money as the blanket.
The end all.
The blank. Yeah.
And I think that's key right there to, just BitShares and the BitShares community again, is that money isn't the end all. Cash, fiat dollars, USD, that's not the end all, especially when, all you need is that end goal, and there are so many ways to get there. But again, typically people lock themselves into that being the end all. So I definitely agree. And putting a plan together, just making it transparent to the whole community, and making sure that it fits their needs as well. Because again, my job to me is always to make sure that not just my needs are met, but that holistically the system, the team, the entire community's teams are met. Because if there are certain pain points in the team, whether it's one individual or one group or batch of people, that can easily spill into another person or another batch, which could, create problems down the road.
I also have to say
100%
that the experience of building Quant was the most educational thing that we ever experienced in the engineering community. I took 8 guys and we built this asset, and I showed them that it costs less than $3 to do this, and you're exchanging value with a guy in Tokyo right now. I mean, just think about the implications of that. And once it's sort of like it's sort of like rocket science is really complicated, except if you're the guy sitting in the cabin pressing the launch button, then it's really easy. Press the button, you know. But the rest is complicated. You don't really have to worry about that, you know. Press the button and go.
That's that user experience.
So we're all really
Yes, it
close.
is,
I think
and
we're
that's
just really close.
Well,
I
I'm
think that'll
glad
be.
to hear.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. You guys go ahead.
I was going to say, I think right there, and again, going to those resources and just having that systematic approach to it, um, is the community. I think the community will realize, because assisting me might be somebody or 2 or 3 people creating a really good um, front end face. You know, I may have a front end developer who I say, okay, look at this, look what we got. Can we make this whatever, whatever? Or I may take somebody and they see it and we design it and we find somebody, but you know, that might not even be a scope of what I can do, but then somebody else simply providing that can make my job easier. Now going to talk to individuals and then they see it and then they have a better feel for it.
Yes. These are the types of things that definitely are things that we need to do. I'll say this from a community standpoint. One thing that I've found that might be valuable information for you guys is it seems that the community generally prefers that a project creates a token or issues a token in return for funding, and does stuff like that as well. They tend to prefer that over by far over worker proposals. Like, so for instance, let's say I want to use Beyond Bitcoin to help the community in X way. I have this project that's going to need money. I will issue 10,000 Beyond Bitcoin tokens at $1 each, and I will only do this once a year. So the only way to get them is, if I have one of these drives once a year, if you don't participate in it, you have to wait another year to get into it. Various things like that, where now you're using the token system as opposed to, I think they're afraid that the worker system will be overutilized and will be used in a way that kind of hurts the system long term, because it becomes a resource drag and it's not efficient. But the way I look at it right now, early on, is we have the power to subsidize efforts like a government does. Yes, that is unfair, but right now we also give the community, the people who actually own the stake in all this system, the ability to vote for it or not. But the power to subsidize is the power to breathe life into something that might otherwise take far longer to incubate, like you call it, and grow into what it needs to grow into. But if we have some extra resources we can put there, we can make it grow a little bit faster, and we can do those things to help these projects uplift us. And I think of it as a very powerful tool if we use it right. But there is, there are other ways of getting funding other than worker proposals that might be politically more, what do you call it? People might feel a little bit more happy with helping it along, as opposed to a worker proposal, or if it's coupled with a worker proposal. That's kind of the general underlying theme I see from our community.
Can we offer an option?
These are just things that I'm trying to bring out to let you guys know about in the beginning, so we don't, if we're going to be working hard behind the scenes on this stuff, it's best to hopefully set it up so we don't stumble over too many excess roadblocks that we don't need to, and potentially fall into ditches and stuff along the way.
Fuzzy, can we issue an option so like if BitShares goes up to $1, you have the right to buy it at 50 cents?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting concept.
That is, that interested me too. I was like,
These are the things that I really like it. I also think, however, that worker proposals early on, we should definitely consider them. I don't know if we should consider them as like the sole source of resources, but it's something that I still want to make sure that the community is aware, and if nothing else, that the community has it in their the presence of mind to realize what worker proposals can be used for, and if done correctly, it can be very value adding, as opposed to just taking value. But these alternative methods are something to definitely look into as well. Does anybody else who's here from the community have any opinions? Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? I just kind of, I can talk with all you guys all day long, but it's kind of pointless if I'm the only one who's saying something, if I'm missing some big points that somebody here might be thinking about.
I've got an opinion. Your chances of getting a worker proposal for marketing voted in are very slim.
I can probably agree with you on that.
They're essentially zero.
Yeah,
Why
the
is
cool
that?
thing with Alicia, though, is that she is also a web designer. So there are things that she might be able to do that would help her subsidize the part of her work that isn't as quantifiable, maybe, to a lot of people, or at least early on. There's a potential way of getting her in the ability to kind of earn some bit shares that way. But like I said, that's why I wanted to bring the community together to talk to her and be here with her too, because you guys have insights that maybe I'm overlooking.
Marketing is meant, or let me put it this way, the understanding within the community is that Mark is to be compensated by the referral program.
Yeah, and on the other side, I'm having people telling me from outside that they hate BitShares because it looks like a scam because has a referral program. So,
that's
I don't know
interesting.
which one's true.
That's interesting because a gentleman that I spoke with last week, he actually asked me that he thought it was like some kind of referral program pyramid chain, and I was just like, no, buddy.
Well, it's my understanding that each project is going to handle its own marketing, and it's going to be paid for by the referrals that they get. For instance, Ken, you say he doesn't own very many BitShares, and that's true. He doesn't own that many BitShares, but he owns 100%, or with his partner, he owns 100% of his project. And that, if it works, is going to make him a very wealthy man.
Well, and I can't disagree with you on that, but at the same time, we have to recognize that we are truly decentralized. And I don't know how many blockchains can honestly say that, because when you look at things like, look at Ethereum as a great example. Ethereum has Consensus, which is a company that owns the core devs. They pay the core devs wages. So that is not decentralized in any way, shape, or form. Sure, other people can come on and build stuff. But guess what? The foundation of Ethereum, in Ethereum, the people who are large stakeholders, who are centralized, have centralized their power to a degree. What they're now going out and doing is they're taking that money and they're actually hiring people to work on Ethereum.
And if we don't do things like this, then our competitors who they might not have the political overhead that we have, and they decide to use that to get an upper hand early on, which might hurt us and our adoption later on, when in fact we are the chain that everybody should be flocking to because it gives them more power and control over their future. But if we don't early on recognize that we have to kind of sometimes give something in return to some of these people to give them even more of an incentive, then I think that we're failing ourselves to a degree too. Do you guys disagree?
Oh yeah, I agree. The whole pyramid thing it's been tried so many times, got a sour taste to it. There just really has to be a novel way of funding, or else we just can't call ourselves a novel project. And I think there are. We just haven't really found the right combination.
Yeah, and once upon a time's correct. Once worker proposals are. It's kind of like what Dan was saying to me. I will never forget this. Dan, I'm talking Dan Robles, you in Genesis, and whenever you said VC money is the most expensive money you will ever take, and I almost see it as a worker proposal is almost like VC funding from the community, and with the exception of. Now, not only do you have to answer to one person, you have an entire community of whom you are certain you will have one or two people who find you to be the antithesis of all that they hold dear in this life. And will make sure that you are aware of it and that everyone else is aware of it. So, you will have both sides of the spectrum, but it's definitely one of those things that is going to be more difficult in our ecosystem to get people on board with all of it.
Well, VC are driving Ethereum, and they're driving Ripple, and they're driving all the other guys, and that could possibly be their downfall, because the VC are telling them how they need to operate. They're telling them how they need to join revenue, bring revenue in, and all this other stuff if they're going to make their IPO, and that's just uber centralization. So that they've sold out, and it's going to become the lightning rod of the wealthy, hitting that storm cloud. We have to put up our own lightning rod and hit that storm cloud a different way. That's why, we are building some applications in stacks of communities like engineers, and we have to find these stacks of communities to engage. And that's kind of where I am about it. But the specifics of funding, we have our own ideas about funding, and it's based on productivity. But we need to get there through Curiosity and Wicked Tools. I'm not sure how exactly to do it in the BitShares environment as it is today, but I know where we need to go to raise money in a completely novel and effective way.
Well, I'm definitely interested in hearing more and hear. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, once upon a time.
Dan and Alicia weren't around for the Brian Page fiasco, but that's tainted the outlook of the community towards marketing, or let me put it this way, towards centralized marketing. I came in late to this meeting right now because I didn't even know what was going to happen. I just found out after it had already started. So I don't know what you said in the beginning, but it sounds like you're trying to plan the marketing for the whole BitShares ecosystem, whereas I don't understand why the three of you aren't planning, or Fuzzy, Dan, and Alicia, why you're not planning the marketing for either Quant or Beyond Bitcoin or both. Why are you trying to plan the marketing for the whole, centralized marketing for the whole BitShares ecosystem? Because from my understanding, because of the Brian Page fiasco, that's not going to get voted in any way by the community. You're going to have to show what you can do on a smaller project first before power is given to another marketing director.
That's a valid point.
What happened with Brian Page?
He had the title of marketing director. He's a very good talker, very personable, outgoing, and he convinced Dan, who then had, as the lead developer and the initiator of the whole project, had all the power. He talked Dan into naming him marketing director, and he was given a huge budget, and he blew it all, the whole budget, and we have nothing to show for it.
Is there any tracking of how he used it and what he planned to use it for ahead of time?
Well, I imagine there's some history you could
Documentation
take.
has been something.
I missed that. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I think there's some lag once upon a time. I'm hearing myself like 3 or 4 seconds after I say things. So if I interrupt you guys, I'm not intentionally doing it. I just want to let you know.
Anyway, the what I'm trying to say is that there's a very bad attitude towards centralized marketing now, and I don't think you're going to get any project approved because people are going to say that, okay, try the referral system first, or show what you can do with one of the smaller projects that are building on top of BitShares, for instance, Quant. Why aren't you discussing marketing Quant? Why are you discussing marketing the whole BitShares ecosystem right now? Or why aren't you discussing marketing beyond Bitcoin and Fuzzy's plan for monetizing his project? I don't understand why a very small group of people here is planning on how to become essentially the marketing director again for the whole ecosystem.
I would call it the whole. Go ahead.
We're dependent on that ecosystem for our project, because right now Quant is dead because we're hung up behind some bug, or I can't get Graphene to go anywhere. I might as well use Ethereum, really.
Exactly.
And I'm completely open to having a team of individuals who have the same thought process, and not just it being one person, but maybe creating a plan in which a lot of people just implement collectively in order to push it to a certain level.
Yeah, as I see it is we have to like if we were just if BitShares existed in a space with no competition, right? I am fully for this the idealistic approach of everything is decentralized and everything, but kind of like Dan has said in the past, and I'm talking Dan Larimer here. There is a difference between decentralization for the heck of it and decentralization to the degree that it is needed for the purposes for which it is needed. So there are various levels of decentralization, and I feel like in the space right now, there's the illusion that all of these chains are decentralized, when in fact, most of these chains are pretty much owned by the same people who could mine, right? And the great thing about that is whenever you've got miners, all you do is if you're the fastest miner and you can get the strongest proof of work node that in the system, you're going to be making more money than anybody else, and you don't have to worry about the bureaucratic aspect of it, because the chain, by force, you are automatically taxing Bitcoin holders to get those tokens that you get.
Do you mind if I interject?
You're taking it. They don't have a choice. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you mind if I interject for a second?
Of course.
Something
I won't
really
take effect.
Something I really agree with Once Upon a Time with is putting that plan, or putting a plan behind a smaller project. I agree wholeheartedly with that. And that's actually something that I've written down, is a flagship project that's using this technology that we can just kind of bring to light, expose, put some focus around, because then I think it will also show the technology behind it in a more positive light, and also make that more comfortable to use. Again, we're talking about user experience. So if people can experience an aspect of it through another project, I feel like that's just as impactful.
Your thoughts, Once Upon a Time?
Well, that's what I was saying. That's the way to start. Prove what you can do on a smaller project rather than the whole ecosystem, because, well, mainly so you don't waste your time, because you haven't got a chance of getting a worker proposal voted in, and you haven't got a chance of the community as a whole of agreeing to a marketing director, a centralized marketing director at this point in time. Once you've proven yourself on a smaller project, you could quite well then convince the community as a whole to support that.
What are your thoughts on that, Alicia? Do you have any thoughts on how it might be done, or do you agree, disagree?
No, I definitely agree with that. Because from a larger scope, that was a major component in the bigger, strategic plan. And so for me, again, it's phases, it's breaking things down. And so that would have been a major, major part, from taking, again, a flagship project, and it could involve smart contract, getting some publicity, something in place, whereas one thing is moving and it can speak and be a face for what can actually be done.
Yeah, I think that there's numerous projects. I'll tell you right now, and this is something that I will tell you, and I've told people from the very beginning. Beyond Bitcoin is a hell of a brand to have, and I am of the belief that something like a term Beyond Bitcoin should be something like a movement that is so labeled is something that's too big for somebody to own, for me to own. I don't know that that's a good thing for me to own all of it. 1% of the stake, okay, maybe in the long run that's a good idea. But I will say this: I've always been very interested in partnering with people, and especially individuals who are wanting to actively push the BitShares project. I have been looking for ways to give stake in Beyond Bitcoin to actual, individual participants in our ecosystem who are thinking beyond Bitcoin, right? Like, which sounds crazy, but even in Bitcoin's ecosystem, very few are thinking beyond it. What they're thinking about is how can Bitcoin touch everything? And we're thinking, not only what is blockchain technology going to do, but what are the consequences to both taking the right path and the wrong path. We're thinking truly beyond Bitcoin, right? So if there's any motivation for you guys, or if it would help you in any way, shape, or form, if I worked with you to help give out some ownership in that, I'm definitely not against collaborating with you. I want to see what. I'll tell you right now. My big thing is if we can see Curiosime built and powered by BitShares, we literally have a completely decentralized way of having essential things done in our ecosystem that our community votes on. This result needs created. Now we need a decentralized system that finds the person who's going to do X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? I'm to help in any way, shape, or form I can, and that means even giving out tokens represent ownership in something like Beyond Bitcoin. So I would personally say let's get some partner organizations, kind of like what he was saying, what once was saying, but then see if anybody would be willing to partner up with us to kind of like buy in with their own tokens and give people a stake in the next layer of BitShares, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the thing is, getting to Curiosity is going to be a bit of a bridge. We've built some of it, and we know some of the technological hurdles. But that does really complete the circuit. It tells people what's in it for me, and it's a better resume. It's a better way to find people. It's not spamming people. It's a better way to filter stuff, data coming at you, and it could also be turned into a game So that's sort of the layer that masks everything else that's all weird and geeky and confusing about blockchains, and it turns into a community event. So it's tremendously important, and but I get very little. If we could maybe push that, if that could be the PR emphasis on building Curiosity, especially if we tie it to BitShare somehow, so that Curiosity is now the hot new blockchain application, then maybe we can back into the BitShares community for that technical support.
I agree with you,
Oh,
Dan.
yes.
I agree with that.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Like you are very good at stopping and letting other people talk, and I'm very good at taking that. So I'm going to try to reverse it right now and let you talk.
Thank you. No, Dan, I agree with that. And that's something we talked about last night. And again, that goes along with, what once just said about, taking a project and really pushing it up there is Karazame. I told you a while ago, I think that is a key component. And you keep telling me it's a few clicks away, and I feel like it's here. I feel like now is the time to really do something with it, whereas we make it appeal to that mass audience. And that can be, potentially that entry point for people to get involved with BitShares is through Karazame. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it changes the focus and from BitShares to something else, powered by BitShares, I suppose would be the way to run with that. But there's a higher threshold of getting people involved. They have to kind of start. Either you simplify that 17-minute movie. Okay, so I made a 17-minute video, and that's as concise as I can get it without losing something. If you see a better way to turn that into a 5-minute movie, powered by BitShares, maybe that's the way to go forward. But I haven't been able to discover that.
Well, even ultimately, that 5-minute video is going to have to be pared down to 1 to 2 minutes. And then it's going to have to be pared down to a sentence and then a paragraph and then some kind of visual. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to have to be seamless through a variance of senses and appeals. So that 17-minute video is definitely going to have to go through a series of changes.
Well, I'm certainly willing
So,
to listen to those changes, and I'm sure it's got to come in smaller pieces. It's got to come in like these digestible biscuits for the common man, and I just can't do that. Somebody else has to take it from here.
To be honest with you, Dan, I think that you are to a degree doing that. But maybe not quite in the exact order that she's taking it. What you're saying, what she's saying is, I think, is let's distill it. Let's distill that message on, sure, let's have the 17-minute video, and then let's distill that down into a message that can be used to bring people to that 17-minute video once they understand that they understand something about this.
Yes.
And actually, the name Quant is a hell of a start. Because who are the people who are engineers in this world? They're generally quants. That's where you see quants go.
I think that's where you should be starting with this marketing effort. You should be trying to market Quant first, and from Quant you go to Curiosity, because once Quant is monetized, then Dan has some funds to work with, to hire, for instance, CMX to do whatever he needs them to do to hire the marketing. So I don't know if Dan Robles could perhaps fund you with some Quant, and then you make the Quant valuable. There you go. You've helped both of you. You've helped yourselves right there, and you're on your way.
The one thing that I think that you also should probably, and not just you, I think everybody the one thing that people I think need to realize in our ecosystem, and this is Dan was kind of getting at this, I think, too, the other day when we had our hangout, is you have various projects, but let's face it, the BitShares ecosystem can change at the drop of a hat. Everything that you base your profit model, your business model off of, can change overnight. For instance, look at the referral fees thing. Is a good example. The fees thing is going to really hurt the ShareBot's profitability. I have not complained about it personally because I wanted the ShareBot to be used by the community in a grassroots effort. And I apologize for the crying. Come here, take a bite. I got to keep him occupied with a popsicle while I'm doing this. But there's an unacceptable risk that would keep most people away from building a business on BitShares without maybe something to help mitigate that risk. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case, but I will say this: if a decision like zero fees or low fees would end up potentially causing a lot of problems for profitability of a token and an ecosystem that you're trying to build on top of BitShares. Well, in the real world, what do other companies do with that? Or what do countries do with projects that they are extremely risky? So risky, in fact, that most of the free market will not really grab onto it because there's not enough profitability to mitigate that risk. Even, you know what I'm saying? It's an equation that you have to do a balancing act. And I think worker proposals need to be also acknowledged as a way to lower the risk and get more people in here. Because the more people who are in here, just like Dan said, just thinking about and trying to solve the problems, the more mind share we have, the more network effect we have, and the more valuable all these projects are going to become because of it. Because let's face it, it's not going to take very long before a couple projects really get hurt by some big politically driven changes, which might be great for some businesses and actually might be driven by some businesses that want to get in. But it's one of those things where, do you want to develop in a place where these things can change at any time? And when you look at other cryptocurrencies, that's their main selling point. Hey, we're not going to change crap. You can come in here and you know that on day one, this is where it's going to be. And on day 4,800, it's going to be this too. We don't change things, but BitShares does. So how do we mitigate the risk that entrepreneurs are going to see when they're choosing between, do I go to some place like Ethereum that has a level of centralization that is almost certainly behind why they're at the market cap they're at, but I can get paid and it's a stable environment for me to play. And if I'm not risking much, but if I win, I really win big. These are the types of things that it's a public perception. And we need to, in my mind, make sure that we recognize that stuff too, if we're wanting to bring on as many people as possible. Now, if somebody disagrees with me, please tell me why, because I like to take the input and maybe become smarter from it.
Well, low fees hurt my endeavor big time, but I'm all in favor of the lower fees because it is so helpful to Ken's project, and Ken's project is what is going to take BitShares viral. So I had to find a way to adapt to the concept of low fees. So
well, and that's fine for people like you and me once, because let's face it, we're also big holders in BitShares ourselves. So if BitShares itself goes up by all these other, but let me ask you a question. Let's step back and say I'm somebody like Alicia who's coming in who doesn't have a lot of stake in BitShares. The only thing I can do, I can build a profitable business, of course, which is great, but I'm also not in control of the ecosystem where it's kind of like, building a business in America, I see all these people get really upset about certain policy changes for good reason, right? Because sometimes these big policy changes, like for instance, Obamacare and stuff like that, they are such big changes that they destroy little startups.
But
And
you are in control of Beyond Bitcoin, so give Alicia a stake in Beyond Bitcoin and let her make it valuable. Her stake.
oh yeah, and I have nothing against doing that stuff. But what I'm asking you, and what I'm asking all of you guys actually is, do you think that that's a bad thing? I mean, for me, I sit here and I think, yeah, the user interface is very important, but even more so, if people feel like I look at Ethereum or I look at BitShares and I say, which one is going to be a less of a risk for me as an entrepreneur? If that perception, whatever perception that I have at that point in time, is most likely going to be what I base my decision on. Am I going to be more likely to succeed on this platform or on this platform? And if one of the platforms is looked at as entrepreneurs, or it's very friendly to entrepreneurs, and it actually supports them and gives them a little extra here and there in ways that no other competitor does, do you not think that those people are going to choose the competitor chain that offers those things over like kind of like grants? That's what, man, I love the idea of grants. But anyway, do you see what I'm saying? Like, we have to kind of find some way. Now, are worker proposals the only way of doing that? Probably not. But I have to personally, I kind of disagree with the fact that like not everybody in here once upon a time is going to, say, oh, well, even if my project dies, if somebody else's succeeds, I'm going to be making pretty good money anyway. Right.
I really don't understand what you're getting at, Fuzzy. If Alicia doesn't have a big stake in BitShares, that's not my problem or your problem. Well, that's her problem.
No, but it is kind of your problem, because if Alicia decides, because she got a grant from like Ethereum's starting to do, mind you, and you guys and I think we all need to recognize the realities of the situation. When you have things like Ethereum that are centrally managed, that can give that sense of stability, that's a big selling point. And if you want to bring in mind share, and if Ethereum grabs the mind share because other people, entrepreneurs see this ecosystem as too risky, and an ecosystem that's really like, it doesn't have as high of a market cap, but not only that, it's not as supportive. Why would they not go? Isn't it a problem for you if she goes to Ethereum instead?
The problem for me is that we gave a huge grant to Brian Page in terms of salary, and it ended up being wasted, the whole thing.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like, it reminds me of when I talk to my brother, and he's chosen some bad girls in the past. But if I keep going back to the one girl every time he runs into a girl who he thinks he might like, and he's like, I don't know, man, I'm a little bit nervous to ask her out. If I said, well, your one experience is pretty much that experience with that bad girl, that's all. I mean, you're just only going to get that experience every time. Then, I'm lying to him, and I'm potentially harming him by omitting important information that, that are actually representative of the truth, as opposed to, what I'm saying is Brian Page is not her. And there are things that I think that we've learned, like she said. Was Brian Page accountable? Did he log what he was using his money for? The fact that she said that, as soon as she said that, I was like, my God, she might as well have been there, because that's exactly the type of stuff that I was talking about, that you and I were talking about. All of us were saying, what is he doing with this money? Can he show us what he's accomplished, right? We have never had that. We've never had a good girlfriend, man. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to take it that route, because we live in PC world these days. But Alicia, I just want to say that. But
I'm laughing. I'm with you. And I think that is a huge. I think that is a huge point right there is, accountability and just seeing and tracking every step of the way. And we have the technology to do that, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly,
Yes.
it's just keeping track of, our progression and what is actually being done with what we're putting into, the community. Where's this effort going and how is it converting into something worthwhile or tangible for the whole?
And we
Now
could
you-
bring you on for a hangouts to answer questions from the community who's actually going out and looking at this transparent data and saying, okay, what do we derive from this data? Well, you know what? This is what we assume. Let's bring her on for a hangout. Let's talk about it. And if we don't like the course that we're taking, we just vote out the worker proposal. To me, that's a good route, at least early on. And I don't disagree with you once upon a time about having at scale, we need curiosity so we don't have to worry about it, right? But early on, I think it's worth it to take that risk as long as the person is doing like what she's saying, using this as a selling point. Like, this is the power of blockchain technology. I can be extremely accountable to you guys. I can be essentially the equivalent of a politician who is completely accountable. And your blockchain, not only would you get the work that I've done, but you would get a use case that is viable that you can also turn around and you can promote that in addition to everything else. As look, this has really happened. She came in after all this terrible, these terrible attempts at marketing that weren't accountable. And she showed that she was accountable using the technology that we had, showed that these other people could have done the same thing. And these are stories. And that's how people connect to this stuff. And that's why we've been doing Hangouts for so long, because these stories connect us. And it's really important for us to recognize that. And it's also important for us to not get stuck in a loop of only negative thinking. And I'm not saying you're negatively thinking once upon a time. You're bringing up some damn good points. But it's also something that we can't be too afraid. Like Bite Master said, penny wise and what was it? Penny wise and something dumb.
Pound foolish.
What is it?
Pennywise
Pound
and pound
foolish, yeah.
Well, Fuzzy, I don't object to having a worker proposal for marketing, but I don't control the system, and I'm just telling you, it won't get voted in.
No, you're right. Oh, you won't vote it? You won't vote for it?
I would vote for it. I'm telling you, it won't get voted in. You will get no votes from the Chinese community. Zero. Absolutely zero. And you won't get votes from Dan Larimer and his clique, his father and his associates. They won't vote for it because they want marketing to be paid for by the referral program.
So right now, marketing is really being done by Ken Code and his project.
And it will be done by me for my project. It will hopefully be done by you for your project. It will hopefully be done by Fuzzy for his project.
See, you're scaring the hell out of me now because I'm saying, shit, you got this moving target, and I'm responsible I have to cook it. I have to hunt it. I got to catch it. I got to cook it. I got to clean it. Got to, put it on the table, serve it up for myself. I might as well use another blockchain, seriously, or try or what is it? I could make a new blockchain for myself, right? From the proof of stake mechanism. So I'm going to go that route. Why? I'm not going to give back to any community that's not. I don't know. That's just kind of a thought.
Well, we just subscribed to paying for 4 weeks of the daily decrypt, for instance, for advertising. That was done by a few people getting together. It wasn't done by a vote for a worker proposal. So there are initiatives that are happening.
That's true. I will say that, but I also, where I stand on this too, though, once upon a time, because I've actually come to you and said it. You give so much to every dang project that you see as potentially valuable. And you even have given in to help projects that you say, you know what, this might not be extremely big moneymaker, but these people are people who I trust and know that they're going to bust their butts to try to make it help. You do that stuff. Not everybody does. And what saddens me is the idea that we might someday really make it big. And there will be people like, say, from the Chinese community who are like, we don't want to do this. We don't want to pay for any of this. Everybody should do it on their own, who are going to be sitting on lots of bit shares, who are going to greatly benefit from people like you, who have essentially done what everybody should have been forced to participate in. Is that voluntarist? That's a good question. Is it something where we can say, you know what, yeah, the end goal is voluntarism, but until we get to this common, these milestones where we have this common infrastructure to accomplish it, we're going to have to take, we can't be voluntaristically pure until we reach a point where the system is actually self-sustaining. You know what I mean? Like,
You guys,
and I'm not saying I'm against the other stuff, but
you guys are the reason why we're here. I mean, I'm here because of Once Upon a Time and Crypto Prometheus and Fuzzy and PC and Peter. I mean, that's why I'm here. I'm saying, oh my gosh, it's a community. They're helpful. They want to see this happen. I mean, that's the big impression I'm getting from BitShares. And I didn't know about the Chinese community. I don't know about the people who are just sort of parasitic. And again, that's a problem that Curiosity would solve also, because you can now bring these people out of the dark.
Well, I would like to hear some more of your opinions on this. Let me step back a little bit, and I really want to learn from you guys what you guys think, because I think you guys already know where I stand. I consider delegated proof of stake the mechanism by which we can give humans the power to choose what real true proof of work is, not just giving it to some group of people who have a single skill set to mine them into existence using technology that burns way too much energy and is not really needed for cryptographic proofing. You know what I mean? Like, what do you guys? I kind of lost where I was going there. What are you guys' opinions as far as that stuff goes? Do you think that we should look at this stuff as as subsidizing stuff a little bit more, or where do you stand, and where do you see the Chinese community coming into this, and how to manage those expectations that are definitely different? Oh, and I'll also say, I would love insight from you as well, Alicia, because I am a psych major, but like I said to you the other day, PR, sometimes you have to be more realistic than idealistic, and that's where my problems sometimes come in. And I will be completely honest with people on that.
No, you're fine. I'm actually just kind of listening and learning at the same time, just how the community works, how it just kind of functions. But that's interesting in terms of the method of marketing. But I can say I do not think that is a bad. It is not bad. It's just not bad. It's just another way of doing it. And I don't think that it should actually scare anybody off. But I think it may be of concern if that is not the best method that an individual company or project sees. But individual marketing, I just think it's a different way. I don't see it as bad, actually, Fuzzy.
Alicia, have you run across?
Could you repeat that question? Oh, he left. Hello?
No, he probably accidentally moved to AFK. I don't think that he did that intentionally. Yeah, and my question really isn't so much whether that's bad or good. I question, I guess, was it you and I who were talking about timing?
I think so. When we're talking about how we feel like there's probably about a good 12 to 18 months before, people start to take big notice on this again.
Yeah, because if you see various different companies, like Google's a good example. They started out with a very small, centralized model around one thing. And they did that very well, to the point where they began getting so many resources that now they could branch into being a more decentralized type of, system with sister organizations that were partnered with them. And you see how that network grows on its own, but it starts with a centralized seed. You know what I mean? And I find myself wondering, are we in this stage where we're just sprouting and we're expecting the leaves that we have to go it on their own? And this little sproutling, we could put fertilizer on it and make it grow faster and get to the point where we really want it to be? Or do we omit putting that fertilizer on there and say, you know what, there might be chemicals in the fertilizer that aren't good. There might be things that we don't need to move that fast. We can move slower. And I find myself in this space thinking that we can't move slower because we're up against competition like Ethereum, who's going to take a crap ton of the market share. And once they do, they take the mind share. I don't know. I'm very I'm back and forth on this.
So what was
You
your
guys have
initial
experience from startups? Well, the question is, not so much for me whether it's a good or bad idea, as so much as, is it an idea whose time is right to use the worker proposals for this, or is it to not use the worker proposals and to expect businesses to come and build on us just for the chance of winning big? Or is it more realistic that we should wait until we reach a market cap of $100 million or $200 million and we have, $400,000 coming in every month or something?
Well, I do think that once his original idea, as far as, a marketing push for individual projects or initiatives, that can add some kind of confidence to the BitShares community. Sorry if that cut off, but I feel like that can add a certain level of confidence that not only the people behind it, but that it can actually work.
And I agree with you. The question that I'm wondering is, let's say Curiosime is the perfect example for me. Let's say Curiosime decides that it's going to go with a model. It's got its business model. It's going to go forward. And then because of something that happens in the Chinese community, they change everything about the fee structure. And now Curiosime is not going to work. It's just going to die. Should we not be utilizing, the only way that those projects turn out to represent stability in that ecosystem is if they don't fail, right? Or am I wrong?
We're listening.
Well, I'm just wondering if you guys think I'm right or wrong, because from the outside, I think to myself, yeah, what happens if this can be turned around two ways. That could go, if it could go really well, like you're saying, we could have, Beyond Bitcoin, Curiosime, all these things, or even just one of them, like open point of sale, like Ken Code's doing. One of them could go viral, make it big, and now everybody thinks that it's safe to come into BitShares and do their thing, right? Which might very well happen. But the question is, couldn't it also cause the problem of a perception of now what if these things fail? And better yet, they fail and they go to another platform where this centralized group of VCs say, yeah, we're going to give you a grant for all this stuff to build it on our platform. It's not as good of a platform, but we have control of it and we're willing to give to get a return because we know that we have to give to get a return. At least early in a business, right? Like you were saying, you have to, how many businesses have you run and you've actually gone places and you are not really you're basically working for free. You're giving away a lot of your services. You're giving away a lot of your assets and capital free to make sure that you build the network that you need that's going to support the ecosystem. And when we're early on in this ecosystem right now and we're competing against actually pretty centralized blockchains, how do we need to worry about competing against them? Or do you think that, just sticking with that perception of, we're going to be open, we're going to be a completely free market, there's going to be no help given to people who need it unless it's, directly tied to a token that you have that you're going to give people? Like, do you see where do you guys see this stuff? I mean, I could really go on and on, but maybe I'm confusing anybody, but please let me know.
Fuzzy, I gave the seed capital to Ken Code and his partner to get started with their project in return for a token. So there's nothing wrong with that. And in my opinion, that's the project that has got the highest chance right now of us going viral, of the BitShares ecosystem going viral. It's because they're coming out with a mobile wallet in 22 languages within a few weeks. And I don't know if you've downloaded the alpha version yet or not, but it's already workable.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, it's already workable. The beta is going to be out today or tomorrow, and it's going to be ready for release within a couple of weeks. Ken has said himself that he's not a marketer. They're going to need marketing, but he's very cost conscious, and he usually says he doesn't hire American firms because they're too expensive. So Alicia's got competition too.
Oh, definitely.
Well, aside from having competition, I see that as key, that project right there, because that can potentially be, just like you said once, that flagship project that we need in order to make it go viral. So really, it doesn't need to necessarily have, from your original standpoint, Fuzzy, a centralized marketing component or PR component. If there is a strong enough project on there that can do essentially what we would be pushing, a marketing push to do for BitShares anyway.
Yeah,
100% agree.
Ken Code's project, the POS and the wallet and the mobile wallet, it's very understandable. Whereas Dan Robles, it takes some serious effort to understand what he's trying to do. Whereas what Ken Code is trying to do is going to be for the masses, and it's very easily understandable. And I'm not.
Do you mind if I interrupt real quick?
Go ahead.
Because I hate to do this, but because you're bringing in, this might move us into a different topic area, especially if Dan speaks up about this. Before he does, however, I want to just make a point. Ken Code has made this point multiple times on the forums as well, and also in Mumble. If we go to a system where we do not have the fee structure that we currently have, and the referral system, if it doesn't end up working very well, then that could hurt that project to the point where the project that you see as having actually great potential in every other area, right? It's got all these wonderful things that are going for it, but it has its weaknesses just like any other project. And one of them, just like all these projects, is that they have to depend on an infrastructure that's still trying to find, we're still trying to decide about our fee structure, right? And this is a hard thing, but that fee structure, if it's changed, could really hurt what he's doing. And that is a risk that he's taking because he's a very special person. But I'm saying, if we're going to bring the masses to develop here and create, and compete in that area, I don't know that a lot of people are going to do that. If it could very easily turn into something really bad too, right? Where there's a story of now out in the news, Ken Code's open POS system was set up with Odoo and a number of other big companies in the accounting industry, and BitShares ecosystem decided to change everything on them and destroyed everything that they'd worked for. That's a terrible perception that you want to You don't want to give that to people either. So that's one of the areas where I'm concerned, because let's face it, in the system that we have, it's great to offer people who are stakeholders in this ecosystem a vote, but we also have to recognize that because of that those votes can destroy the things that might project us into the future. So it's very difficult for me, like, to say, and I guess it's the same thing with the worker proposals, but it's a quandary that I'm trying to figure out myself. And I would love input on it, given what my opinion is. Do you guys not see that as a big deal? Do you guys not see it as a very real possibility that a great project could be killed just by a decision on fees or something little, and it turns into something where, maybe we should have just helped subsidize that project a little bit because it had everything we needed except this? Because that's what VCs do. They look at, what's the total package? And what we're looking for is something that has the total package but needs funding.
Well, Ken Code initiated this project when the fees were quite high. He's one of the people pushing for the lower fees. And in this case, he's going to succeed because that's what the whole Chinese community wants, is very low fees. So I don't see the problem there in that
low
regard.
Fees or no fees?
In that regard, I don't see a
difference.
problem for Ken. Other things can change, well, that's the chance you take. Things can change, and then you've lost your investment. But I think of all the projects I've seen, Ken's has the greatest chance of going viral.
But that's fine if we're living in an ecosystem where BitShares has no competitors that people could go to, because the competitor is seen as a better place for entrepreneurs. Right? We have to be looked at as inviting to the people who are going to build us too, right? We don't want to be looked at as sharks who, if you build it and they don't come, well, that's, it's a balancing act, right? We don't want to socialize it, but we also need to recognize that we are up against platforms that can very easily support things that they see as kind of like what Kenco's doing. That would help them succeed even if there was a big change, which can definitely change the risk.
Fuzzy, let me interrupt for a second. Ken Code is like weeks away from release. We're going to beat the market. We're going to be way ahead of Ethereum. We're going to be way ahead of Monero. We're going to be the first ones out with this Bitcoin 2.0 wallet. We're going to be out there in a couple of weeks.
I won't disagree with you on that, but my question, I think is still out there, because he might make it there right now, right? This might all be fine and dandy, but one of the things that you hear, and I think that this is very wise. A lot of the things that you hear from these different cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin developers, is we have to be very, very, very careful to change anything. And in the BitShares ecosystem, because it's less decentralized, it's more decentralized, these things can happen in a more volatile and unexpected way. So how do we mitigate that risk so we can be looked at in the same risk profile as other platforms that don't offer as much on the technology end? Does that make sense?
Well, that's why I think Ken Code's project is the perfect one to support right now, because it's going to have Bitcoin 2 on the wallet, and then when people try it for the Bitcoin, and because it's got Odoo, the 50,000 merchants around the world that you can use it on, and he's going to be bringing in other merchants too, because you can use Bitcoin, and then if they do give the BitShares token a try and see how lightning fast it is, that's where we have the best chance, I think, in the short term of going viral, and we're going to be there way before Ethereum is.
I think that's a risk that everybody, me personally, should be considering, especially with where it is now, and just in recognition of the time frame that we have with things like this. I guess while you guys were talking, my question, I just interested in how much you guys support each other outside of just putting coins into things, but just looking at the different products you have, seeing how viable they are, seeing where they are in a certain, spectrum of reaching market, and then dropping support into them in a variety of ways. Aside from just being, I don't want to say being afraid of what may happen if the infrastructure changes, but just kind of pulling in support for particular projects on a wider scale. I'm not sure if I particularly see that right now. I guess you guys can add to that.
Are you you don't see how we're going to pull in a bunch of projects on a wider scale, like kind of to turn into something like Google App Store where everybody wants to build on us type of thing?
Well, no, I see that, but the same way you made a mention earlier about how Google kind of concentrates a little bit of, around one piece and then expands, has there been a certain communal concentration of support and efforts around this wallet that is, nearing market?
We have done hangouts with them for the donation drive to get it started. They know that they're welcome to have them pretty much any time. Now, with that said, I don't know much else beyond that in terms of the community helping with anything else, but other than maybe some testing a little bit. But in terms of the marketing and all that stuff, no, that I know of.
I guess,
So you're
and
saying that the more projects that come on and become big and important, the less likely BitShares will invoke their changes because they'll have a gun to their head that they'll lose all these big customers if they make these changes. So the volatility in BitShares is contingent on the number of projects that are out there using it.
That's what I believe. I believe that if you might have one project that really succeeds and holds the entire market. This is the killer part. Like, not all business models are going to be the same. So how do we cover all these other business models that might not be, they might look at BitShares and say, wow, the technology is great, but because of the way they've done everything, I might as well just create my own graphene chain. And that's fine and dandy because we're in an open source movement. But for the shareholders of this ecosystem, it's a balancing act that I think that we have to at least be mindful about. And I just wanted to discuss it and see where everybody stands, because yes, the more projects that you have, if they go viral basically at the same time, because you found this magic sweet spot where it works for everybody, then that's the great thing. That's the best way to do it. But until then, when we're still in these testing phases, do we want to test something just to test it, see how it works? We think it's a great idea. We think it's going to be the next big thing, but everybody has to admit, like you said, Dan, these are all tests. But if we test this and it destroys something that we had going really well and creates bad blood, it could be a nightmare PR politically, like PR wise for us too. If you have developers going around saying, my God, they destroyed our project, it was going well. We don't think that blockchains should be owned and controlled by people. We think that it should be like something like Ethereum, where you have a central foundation who signs off on everything as dictators. We have to be mindful and bring in all this input and somehow try to find a solution to making our blockchain seem as stable and as safe as possible to entrepreneurs. Because yes, the entrepreneurs are definitely not risk averse people. They are mathematicians in their own way when it comes to calculating that said risk, and they do want to succeed first and foremost. So if they see BitShares as a hostile environment for succeeding, and they see other technologies as a place where they can get the aid and assistance that they need in every way, shape, or form possible, and there's a level of stability that they can rely on, then you're going to see that platform, even if it might have a slower blockchain that doesn't scale, they're going to bring on people who eventually do answer those problems. And then we're going to not even have that on them. So that's how I see it. The question is, where is the sweet spot for BitShares? Because it is definitely a different ecosystem that has been attempted pretty much anywhere else. So we are quite literally in the cave with a damn candle trying to come out of this cave. You know what I mean? Like,
well, a good marketing program can do the same thing.
And that's what Ethereum had. But guess what? It was centrally backed. I can assure you it wasn't just a bunch of people who came together and voted on it. And therein is the problem, right? Because guess what? Because of Ethereum's brilliant marketing campaign, and I find myself thinking, man, if Alicia would have been here for the day, and she would have been the one who took Brian Page's spot instead, we would be in probably Ethereum's position, because the stuff that she was talking about last night with me was, she didn't even know it, but it was precisely what Ethereum did. Like, precisely. And I think that we're a different ecosystem, but we have to recognize that and be mindful of it. And this is the very difficult place for me. I don't know the answer. And this is the reason why, you guys probably hear me getting a little bit more passionate about it. It's something that we have to solve. It is so important we solve this. This is, to me, is one of the key problems. Like, just like the power to tax is the power to kill, the power to subsidize something that actually is beautiful and amazing is the power to bring life to it in an ecosystem where otherwise, even with all that it had, it might not have succeeded. And if you want to have a bunch of this stuff, this might be an opportunity to do that. Maybe it's not. I'll talk about it all day. I think you guys know where I stand. I don't know. I just want to give yeah, please.
I guess my question is there currently a centralized support system set up, and or if there isn't, is there some kind of system where there's decentralized support that is easily obtainable?
No. Thank you for that question. That is a very insightful and brilliant question.
Well, there is fuzzy from individual projects. It's the individual projects that are centralized, and that's where you can get an advertising budget from.
You can get advertising budget to a degree, I guess. But I mean, do you think that Ronnie's going to give you advertisement budget? You know what I mean? Like,
Ronnie's paying out money for marketing. He's paying for videos. He's paying a public relations person to get out the PR releases he does. He's already spending money on marketing.
Oh, definitely. And I'm not saying that he's not, but well, and that's a good point. Maybe this means to me that exchanges are going to be the places that we're going to have to get them promoted. Maybe we have to get people like Ronnie who have exchanges, or maybe wallet software, probably wallet software as well, of course. But having these exchanges kind of competing in this ecosystem, because otherwise, there's so many questions, and like she was asking, there's not really decentralized support. And these are things that, Dan has said that they would pop up eventually, but I can tell you right now, there are a lot of people, has this been working for Ronnie? Yes, to a degree it has. But I know that there are a lot of people who have said, we don't even want to work with BitShares because it doesn't have what she just asked. We have no way of that's why Xerox been working on the documentation. But even with that, the documentation, this is pretty high-end technology. I mean, this is really complex stuff, and it takes a lot of effort to do it. Having support and all those things are very valuable. And I actually think that those are things that we should be paying money out of the ecosystem for. I think that there's something to be said about actually having, certain projects that are basically for the public good that are just given to everybody has power over it and a stake in it too. But anyway, I'm going to trail off and
I think I have a lot to
it's
chew
hard.
on. I think we have a lot to chew on, and I've got to be heading out in a few minutes. So, is there a good place we could set this airplane down and work on the next meeting?
Well, I'd like to, I actually I figured because Alicia has been quiet, I figured this has probably been a good time for her to listen and see the social dynamic and the philosophical discussions. This has been mostly for an introductory type of thing anyway. So I'm fine with going as long as we want to go here. I have some stuff that I do have to get done today too, but this is important to me that we go through this process because I think it's actually pretty important for her to hear us go through these discussions so she knows. And I think the fact that she's been so quiet is a good testament to the fact that I'm probably right on this. She's probably sitting here listening, taking notes.
Yeah, I am definitely taking plenty of notes. And so, I guess, chiming in when necessary, but it does me well to listen because when I listen to what is going on, how you guys interact and or different issues that you're experiencing, for me, it just can come together for a way for me to synthesize it into something just more cohesive if that's a place where I can add value, so I'm just listening for real. Just listening and learning at the same time.
Provides insight to people, to somebody who hasn't been here since day one for the history.
Or even go back further in history. How would you have marketed Bitcoin when it first came out? Or how would a marketer have approached it? Because there was no funds available to pay marketers when Bitcoin first came out. The people marketed out of absolute passion and because they owned a lot of Bitcoins themselves.
Yeah, that's true.
Such a grassroots approach there.
And it works to a degree, but it's a lot harder to get that network effect when now there are thousands of tokens using blockchain technology. You see, Bitcoin had that selling point that I am the only thing that exists that offers this. And as people start realizing that, they start getting addicted because of that. I did not stick with Bitcoin because I had a lot of it. I stuck with Bitcoin because of the vision and what it represented and what it meant. And I knew that there was value there because I understood what it could do for humanity. And I stuck around with it. And those are the types of things like it's hard for me to say that Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin is it's like comparing apples to oranges because yes, they're both fruits, they're both blockchain technologies, but they're both completely different in a lot of ways, especially with respect to the governance and social management. It's really, they're dang good questions. I don't know the answers to all of them. And that's largely why we get it together to talk about this stuff, because you guys do provide insight. And even if something you say once upon a time that I might not register it right now, and or I might disagree with it, there might be, a couple instances here in the future that this happens, and this happens. And I go, oh, well, since that happened, okay, I completely understand and agree. Or, this stuff, we might not have the answers to all these things, but like Alicia was saying, we can, with this information, we can, in the future, we can kind of synthesize with new information. This information might synthesize with that and create something that's extremely valuable and insightful for us to use. So, I don't know. I tell you guys where I stand, not because I think I'm right, but I think that the points by which I'm standing have a lot of validity that we need to recognize. Now, I can't disagree with you either. Once upon a time, there's definitely that very real aspect that people don't want to have to pay for anything. And, unless they want to buy into it. And I see that as creating more volume on the exchange too. So that's not a bad thing either. but we have to strike a balance in some way, shape, or form. And maybe we're thinking too hard about it. I don't know. It's very good questions. I don't know where I stand on it. You've brought up some very good points. This is a very difficult place for me because I see very valid points on both sides. And that's where I guess market research would come in.
I
To be honest
agree.
with you, I can't see any other way.
I agree with the market research component right there. I was actually going to ask that earlier when I was taking notes. Has there been ever any kind of market research efforts made, or some kind of data being pulled in as to how people are thinking and or experiencing this technology, and not just as a whole, but BitShares in particular?
Yeah, RG Crypto did a little bit of that, but he's kind of dropped out currently, so I don't know how to get a hold of his research. He was doing research on the effects of different campaigns, like Twitter campaigns and things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but that's no longer happening. It needs to be recognized because once our community RG Crypto kind of said it's really hard to how did he say this? He was talking about the profitability of marketing using the traditional avenues that he used, which was affiliate marketing. He said that it was very hard to market BitShares because it's changing. It's so nebulous because there's so many things that it can be, and you kind of it makes it very difficult to market it. And at that time, we had been burned by marketing so much by paying for marketers who didn't end up really doing much of anything with what there were some people who did, but we have had a lot of problems with marketing around that stuff. So there's that too.
I was just going to, sorry. You just made a point about, gosh, you just lost me. It's something you just said. Oh, the fact that, I guess something about the network not being stable or something, or it changing so much. But I think right there is looking at those things that you don't think will look good and then turning them into opportunities. So right there is taking an approach that this system is flexible and it's ever changing. It's always moving, it's always progressing, it's continually being built on, and it's flexible. So right then and there, you're telling people, not necessarily saying it's unstable, but you're saying that this is uncharted territory. Walk it with us.
Yeah, so I think the only way to go for now is to pick something that is going to be stable in the short term, which is the projects, the individual projects, the ecosystem as a whole. There's not much hope. Like there's no there was no use advertising the 5% return you get on your money in the early days. That was what was being advertised, and that's totally been dropped. Whereas a project like the mobile wallet, that's not going to be dropped. That's going to continue on.
That's a good point.
And I know I keep harping on the mobile wallet rather than say my own project, and I am going to be doing advertising. But Alicia, you got to understand that I don't know anything about you, and I don't know any of your work. I saw one short video, and I've seen better. Let me put it that way. That one that Dan Roble linked me to. I've seen that, and I've seen better. It was the one with the the writing. I don't know what you call that method, but I've seen better than that. So you're going to have to build up a reputation. And I've never seen not even one single posting by you, or I didn't recognize it on the forum, for instance. You're going to have to build up a reputation on the forum too.
Yeah, and those are valuable insights. I'll say this: one of the things that I would be really interested in, though, would be And I actually think that this has been kind of framed around marketing, which is maybe not the best way to have framed this discussion. There is a lot of marketing research, and I think there are. We're trying to find a place for Alicia to be able to build that reputation and show what she does. So this has been pretty valuable as far as the insight it's provided me on how that might go about. But where do you stand on this, Alicia? Like, what are your thoughts here?
I definitely agree with him as far as getting involved with the community, because then that you're showing your value. I'm in the past we've done, whereas you have like a probationary period. I don't want to call it probationary period, but whereas essentially you prove yourself through your efforts or the value that you provide in initial startup. And then after that point, it takes you to a next phase in which you do certain things. So let's say, for example, we take Karazame and or whatever project that we decide that we want to push, right? We use that as an example, and then at the same time that we're building up that was it I- social capital, so to speak, social capital in the community, but then working on that project. I mean, I agree.
Well, you know what? We'll have to talk behind the scenes. I have projects I'm always working on that you can help with that I will gladly donate to you and tip you and do whatever I can and help you in other ways, because I feel this is an experience for me. Everything that, people get so frustrated when things aren't perfect. But for me, when it's not perfect, it might be frustrating, but I learn from it and I get better because of it. And there are skills that I'm going to learn from this bot not being perfect. And I'm going to have to go in and probably fix some stuff on my own at times. I will learn from that. That'll be something then that I can use. These are things that, there's more than the learning experience here is also valuable. So I would gladly help you in return. But there are other projects that I think that we could also hook you up with.
Some of the things I'm hearing now, it sounds like a pay-to-play gig where, Alicia and everybody just approve themselves to join. But, I don't know anything about you guys. I never even asked about you guys.
You're right.
So it just seems like it feels like a pay-to-play now. And I'm wondering if that's something you guys are holding people out of the group for any particular reason, or what are the precise requirements for an individual to become part of this club?
Well, for me, you're part of the club when you choose to be. It's that simple. Now, I kind of see that's where my perception is too, Dan, is that our community can be seen as very unwelcoming, and we are seen as very unwelcoming by pretty much every cryptocurrency community you talk to. And it's largely, I think, because of that really staunch, pay to play attitude. But at the same time, can I say that that's incorrect? It's against how I do things. Am I perfect? I don't know. Probably not. Most likely not.
I got something to say there, Dan. That was a very ridiculous statement. Doesn't an engineering firm have to build up a reputation for smaller projects before it can take on bigger projects?
No, we have to go through, it is a pay to play. We have to go through extreme amount of expense to get your license, to get your education, to pass your exams before you're even allowed to touch a project, let alone a big one or a small one. It is what it is. But there's also a certain amount of responsibility behind that. There's also the potential that you kill somebody if you're not vetted properly. So maybe a little different on that front. But I'm just exposing a point of view, a position. I'm not saying I've been here a year. Okay, that's why I'm part of this club, is because I've been here a year and I've watched my step every way. Didn't try to get too involved with the group or try to push too hard in any one manner. Participated where I can, and it was expensive, and I'm willing to do it. But it just seems like if we're trying to get a broaden our scope, broaden our involvement, something's got to give.
If you want to get more than just the 3% of the population who's crazily adamant about doing things, you have to recognize that the rest of the population is going to run off of other incentives, and they're going to see it as an unwelcoming ecosystem, and that's what we see today. So I have to say that I think that is in large part why we see that, because whenever I ask people in other ecosystems, that's exactly what they say is like, your community is very unwelcoming. Like, you're very unwelcoming to projects. You're very suspect of projects. Like, I can go to this community and they're loving the fact that I'm there, just trying stuff. But but at the same time, they don't give the citizens there a choice in any way, shape, or form. So, that's where I struggle. I don't know the answer to this. This is something that but we have to recognize that whether Dan is right or wrong, that's where the perception has been.
I think from a personal standpoint, when you understand your personal capacity and the impact of value that you can provide, you don't necessarily worry about that. So for me, in this instance, I know Dan, I know you very well, and I know Karazime. And for me, it's a matter of, okay, well, then let's just get this thing going. Let's just do it. Again, because while initially it is bit shares that we're talking about, I see a lot of impact that Karazime could have, and I see what it can do. So on a personal level, it's like, well, I'm not really worried about the pay to play. I'm just ready to get going because I know what can happen, and I know what that means for a lot of different people. On another spectrum, I do understand what you mean, Fuzzy. Well, this has actually been my first hangout. I've not participated in the forums yet. And so maybe again we're going back to social capital and people wanting trust, and there already being a past in which, it's not been the best experiences with individuals from a marketing background or a public relations or a communications background. So that could be understandable. But I do think in terms of either an onboarding process or a way to open the community up to people of other industries and creating an atmosphere which is easier for cross-pollination, there may need to be something. But then again, in that sense, it may be beyond Bitcoin that takes that lead and creates an atmosphere that is very welcoming to individuals, and now people are more comfortable with stepping into this space.
Yeah, the interesting thing for that is, well, here's the deal, right? In our ecosystem, I can go out to other cryptocurrencies and start promoting them, or I can charge other people to put advertisements in my stuff or in these hangouts and all that good stuff. But the way that we have it right now is, we've asked people to give money for things, and they don't want to give money for this type of project. And this is a very good example. I've been doing this since almost day one. I assure everybody here that I've spent far more money doing it than I have made money. And I've had a group of people who can say the same, who've worked with me. And this is very serious to me, because I don't, I love our community and I do this for a greater, higher purpose. But it is sad to me that it's so hard to get help when, I go out of my way. Like, if you watch this, if you see how we do it, it is really brilliant. I have to pat myself on the back and pat everybody else on the back who's been participating in this. We have a share bot where I can start reaching out to all these other tokens. We can have hangouts with people who are passing out their own tokens from the BitShares network. We can do all these things, but the way that it's set up with Beyond Bitcoin is, we generally don't charge entrance fees. People get upset when people have already, I've just done it once. I'm getting ready to do it once right now. But you need help to a certain degree, and it's very difficult. I can give out Beyond Bitcoin tokens, but at the same time, for the amount of funding that you're doing and you're raising, and you have to admit, there's not only just the risk of of your project failing, but there's also the risk of the law coming at you and trying to charge you a crap ton of money because you did something illegal by building a community, using a token. There's so much risk
I have
that
a
goes into
question.
this area that it's, yeah, go ahead.
How have you monetized your current model?
We haven't. What we've been doing is trying to keep with the BitShares ecosystem. But the BitShares ecosystem is very small. We haven't really reached out to a bunch of these other cryptocurrencies because they have been so, they have, well, I don't want to say it's just it's we disagree with how those cryptocurrencies have worked. And generally speaking, we felt like we could build our own infrastructure, kind of like where anybody can join, right? And we didn't want to make that barrier to entry very high. And we could monetize it by bringing on other projects and charging, but our community is so small. The people who are interested in BitShares is so small that it's kind of hard to monetize it in any significant way in that route, right? Because if I do an advertisement, it's not going to really do a whole lot for us. Especially though, if we're staying within the BitShares ecosystem, which I think is the preference of most people who are here. It's a very difficult area for me too, because that's where my idealism bites me in the ass, as I try to help as much as possible. And that's why I say the stuff that I say to Once Upon a Time about giving out money to so many endeavors that aren't going to give returns on investment. Because when you help like this, you do lose a lot. You do sacrifice a lot to make sure that these things happen. But at the same time, I can't say that it's a bad thing, because for what we've got, what we've paid out, we've gotten a lot in return. There's a lot of tools we have now that are so frigging valuable. I mean, it's I don't know. I'm probably not even answering your question right now, because the business model is open for all. Anybody can come in and take our content and monetize it. We ask for donations, essentially.
Okay,
Donations do not get you very far, though.
Fuzzy, let's get more specific. What's the profit model or the monetization of the ShareBot?
The ShareBot, well, that's relatively simple. It's the referral, right? It's the referral program. Whenever I send out a token to you, let's say I create a million Napolitanos and I give them to Judge Napolitano on Twitter, and he creates an account and he starts checking it out and looking into it, and he starts falling in love with BitShares and, using it all the time. And he's using the ShareBot all the time. Every time he transfers out of the wallet, the ShareBits wallet, he ends up getting, he pays a transaction fee, right? Well, not for very long, because that transaction fee is going to be very, very small. So we're not going to get much in return from that transaction fee that he pays any longer. So that's kind of a downside to what's going on in the ecosystem with that. But I try not to speak up about it because, to be honest with you, I want BitShares to succeed. And I know that pretty much everybody else who's involved in it, brownie holders, etc., they are well compensated and taken care of, and they are going to own a large stake in it anyway. So it's not that big of a deal, but it's not going to be extremely profitable if we don't have at least somewhat decent transaction fees. There is the other aspect that if you hold, let's say you hold 20,000 brownies in your ShareBits wallet, and somebody share drops on ShareBits wallet, the brownies that are in it, then we get those tokens, so we can use those for other things. There's a lot of things that we can do with the ShareBot. There's a lot of stuff, and I think we'll make it profitable, but it's going to take time and effort, and that's.
Okay, so you're releasing tokens for that tomorrow, is that correct?
That's what we're going to be working on. I actually probably should be getting off of here relatively soon to start preparing for that. But
okay, I've got an offer to make. for Alicia. I'll put up 100,000 bit shares if you want to handle the marketing for the share bit for Fuzzy's project. That's even a sub.
Damn it! Once upon a time, you can't do this.
Why can't I if ShareBits works, then my overall investment in BitShares is going to be very successful. Plus, I'm already invested in ShareBits, and I'm getting tokens for that tomorrow. So that's not a lot of money. But you can prove what you can do with that amount, 100,000 BitShares, and I would suggest that to top that off, Fuzzy award you some of the tokens in the ShareBit project, and then you can prove what you can do on that, and then you'll build a name for yourself within our community. And now a second suggestion before I go and Fuzzy goes is that there's a bounty out put up by Ken Code to hold meetups. So if you hold a meetup in your community, he'll pay you, and I'll double whatever I think he's offering 2,500 bit shares or something like that. But if you can design a meetup and make it so that it's generic, so that other people can copy your format, that would be a huge boost to our community.
Wow, that sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And actually, I do have to run as well, but I am on your site now, Fuzzy, and I would like to do some work here as well. So we'll definitely talk, and I'm up for what you just explained once. So I would like to continue this conversation. And Fuzzy, I do want to do some work for Beyond Bitcoin for sure, as well as what you just shared, the share bot.
Oh, well, you know what? I will gladly put in money toward it too. I want to bring people in who we can trust, who have the vision more than anything. I appreciate you once upon a time, but I have to be a stubborn ass with you because, man, I just wish everybody would realize that we should, if we all gave like this, and I'm not saying in the sums that you're talking, but the percentage of the shares that you probably give out, I think that if I give out half of the shares that I own and the rest of them go to $5 because of it, it's really a value. It was a brilliant exchange, you know. But yeah, I'll work with you, Alicia, on seeing what we can do to get together a little package to help you out, and we can. I need to find some way of helping once upon a time.
Fuzzy, that would help your ShareBits project if you had a marketer working with you. So it's a win-win-win situation. If the ShareBits succeeds, then my holdings in BitShares are going to be worth a hell of a lot more. So it's a win-win-win. It helps you, it helps Alicia, it helps me.
I agree. Fuzzy?
I will always say I will always agree with something synergistic relationship. You will always hear me wonder why the hell other people can't do it to shoulder some of the burden too, because man, by the time you really, I understand what you're saying, but damn, everybody else is going to get like 1,000%. You're going to get 300% return. Anyway, but life isn't fair. So yeah, we'll go with that, man. I appreciate it. I was not asking for money or anything, but I will also pitch in. And we'll talk to Ronnie of CCDK because he's got 60,000 shares, and he's going to be getting the lion's share of the transaction fees. Beyond Bitcoin's only going to get like, I'd say 50% of what he's going to get. So I think I would love some help approaching a businessman who's a very staunch businessman about saying, hey, how we can bring value to this and how you can help in a way that doesn't seem like, it's going overboard, because I've found we're at the point now where paying for a whole lot of extra stuff is maybe not something he's extremely interested in.
Okay, Fuzzy, Fuzzy, to me, it sounds like your microphone's crackling and it's quite disturbing or hard to listen.
Problem.
But I've got something to say anyway. So Ronnie Ronnie might kick in for a marketing program for ShareBits too. So you might have an even bigger budget for the marketing of ShareBits. And if the ShareBits marketing is successful, and I see that, as I said, I'm going to need to be hiring somebody for marketing stealth in the very near future. So get to it.
Well, once upon a time, I'll say this: the stealth is going to be tokens, right?
Yes.
We can use the ShareBits, the ShareBot to help. What I'm wanting to do is essentially get an army of botters, open source botters, to help distribute tokens for the accomplishments of various tasks on social media. What I will say is this: I appreciate you guys. I will definitely reach out to Ronnie, but I have to be honest with you, and I'm not saying this in a bad way. People who are very business minded have to think this way, so it's but I have a very difficult time asking people for money. So if anybody would like to help me in that area, as far as selling him on getting extra money to ask for marketing of this beyond some Forbes articles, I would gladly be interested in working with people. Yeah, it does need that. It definitely does, which is actually why I've been reaching out to them. I'm going to get access to the front end code. I have a little bit of understanding about how HTML and CSS works. I need to learn more about JavaScript, but I need to work on that side a little bit. And I actually think that it'll be good to learn how to work on it, because the more I learn, the better, the more I'll be able to add to it over the course of years and years. But
Okay,
you are
so
definitely right.
Ronnie kicked in for that 4 weeks of advertising at the Daily Decrypt, so he's definitely interested in marketing. He for sure is. So I think he would be interested in marketing the ShareBit also.
Yeah, some insight on how to sell him on it would be the best thing you could help me with on that.
Well, Johnny Bitcoin got the advertising on the Daily Decrypt started just by starting a thread in the forum, and he said he wanted to sponsor 1 week. He went ahead and sponsored the 1 week, and then he asked for help to recover some of his expenses for that. And then I said, well, I'll kick in the whole amount for 1 week, but I want you to go for 4 weeks, because I didn't think a 1 week campaign was enough. And then Ronnie chipped in, and so did a whole bunch of other people, and within a couple of days we had enough money to sponsor the whole 4 weeks. I think you could do the same with saying, well, you're putting up so much to start marketing the ShareBits, and then I'll add your thread and say I'm kicking in 100,000, and then other people might also join in, Ronnie being one of them.
This is a brilliant idea, and this is why I love that we have these, because whenever thank you guys.
So anyway, to make it more interesting for Alicia, if you want to PM me on the forum with your account, your BitShares account, I'll send 100,000 to you today, so that you can start being very interested in BitShares.
I hear you, and I'm already very interested, but I appreciate you.
I'll help you set up a wallet and a ShareBits account.
Okay, I'm going. Talk to you guys next meeting. Bye.
Thank you.
See you later. Once upon a time, man. This is why we have these. We don't do them as, I don't know if you're familiar, but there's something called Let's Talk Bitcoin. And Let's Talk Bitcoin's like a bunch of centralized, they're interviews, right? As opposed to big group meetings. And they have their role, but if you look at today's media, it's so many pundits, right? And if you're on the television, you are a pundit, and you should be listened to. And the general knowledge, how people see themselves is they're not very valuable. They can't be pundits. They can't, be as smart as a person on television or somebody who has their own talk show. So we've tried to I've tried to change it up. So this is a conference type of style thing, like a C-SPAN or, a C-SPAN book event where people come in and they ask questions and talk to each other, respectfully, of course, and do it that way. And then what we do is we actually take we let people sign a guest book, and then sponsors can, if you have your own token that you're wanting to distribute, you can distribute it to the guest list who participated in the hangout, and then the next hangout I will read off, a promotion of your token that you provide us with. So we're doing these types of we're trying to make it like a more communal effort that shows people and teaches people, we're not all perfect. We don't all know everything. There's no such thing as a person who does. So try to be somebody who participates and learns as much as you can from one another. And it's been a really beautiful thing that we've done here. The question is, how do you do it and make money? Because so often the two things seem like they are counter to one another, But I appreciate you taking the time, hun, and we'll definitely, I think the ShareBot will help with that. Now that we're connecting things, value added and synergies can kind of help on that.
I agree. I definitely agree.
Let's talk. I'll get you maybe we could get you a lifetime membership wallet set up. I have no qualms pitching in a large portion of what it'll take to get you that. And you can also play around with the wallet, and we can send you the tokens, and you can keep them there safely and watch literally the fastest blockchain in the world in action.
Sounds like a plan. What we can do is